As we continue our fucking obsession with tier lists, here we are again with The Lovable Sopranos. Again, I say this at the beginning of every tier list video. Not only are we streaming right now, maybe the chat will say hi, maybe they won't. But we are streaming right now, and we have done a bunch of tier lists in the past. Go and check them all out if you care. Mad Men, Game of Thrones, Attack on Titan, Berserk, Vinland Saga, Naruto we did yesterday. And we've done a bunch of tier lists, bunch of character tier lists. There's probably more in the future if you're watching this in the past. Because I'm going to try and do like 2 monthly. And this month's second one is going to be The Sopranos, the best television program of all time, even better than Mad Men, even better than Game of Thrones, even at Game of Thrones' best. And here we are to rank them. I put them in a little neat order here, like I do with some of the tier lists. I try to put the family, so we got the main four from the household, then we got Livia, Junior's attached here, then Janice, and Bobby's married to Janice, so we put her there, then Blundetto as a cousin, so we put him there, and then fucking Chris and Adriana, and then we go through Tony's main guys, Ralph's crew, and fucking so on. The Aprils, New York, and then the leftovers, which is like Artie, Ro, Melfi, and Gloria. It's funny how Gloria is the only side girl on the list, but she's probably the one I remember the most about. I think she was around for like a season and a half or something. Man, we really need to do a big Sopranos rewatch. I've only seen it once, which sucks. But I don't know, this is going to be difficult to delineate between S and A tier. Because I don't know if I put like everybody in S tier, because they probably all deserve it. Or if I try to just put the very best of the very best in S tier, and then put some S tier characters in A tier just to differentiate between a few of them. Fuck off, HP client, whatever the fuck. So, I mean, Tony's got to be S tier, right? He's my second favorite character of all time, second only to another character on this list that we'll get to in a second. What is there to say about fucking Tony Soprano, huh? Let's zoom in a little bit. We can afford to, since this is a smaller tier list than we're used to. Even though there are a lot of Sopranos characters that are not on here, like Finn isn't on here, and none of Meadows' boyfriends are on here. AJ's really hot girlfriend isn't on here. There's a bunch of people that aren't on here, you know. But Tony Soprano, we spend next to fucking 80 hours, and it's almost all with this prick. His fucking dream sequences are great, where he's having symbolic dream sequences where he's talking to talking fish with Pussy's fucking voice coming out. He's got even when he's in the coma, there's like a 2-episode one. It just I remember it dragging on a bit the first time I saw it, but I think retroactively, if I saw it all for a second time, I'd like it a lot. I've seen a bunch of Sopranos clips on YouTube to like refresh myself since I watched it for like, I think it was like 2 years ago now. And I've seen episodes here and there that I've rewatched. Obviously, I rewatched season 3, episode 13 for the video I did. I guess I should show the video. We did a whole video on the Cor and Grata scene from season 3, episode 13, the finale there, which really highlights probably my opinions on Meadow and Junior that we will get into when we get into them. Hold on, Minty spamming our emote in here, that looks good. Only took you 5 minutes to think of, and then Seth spamming it, and he's atting the people. Wow, pretty good. Got that one kid who might not be a mod much longer. We're talking about Minty here. Oh no, I missed the whole fucking war in chat. Now we're looking at the chat. They were spamming emotes out the fucking ass. Jesus Christ. Hi YouTube, watch Breaking Bad, Miller says. That's a disgusting thing. When you get these Breaking Bad pricks out of here. We seriously stand the Sopranos. What can we say? Hi YouTube, you pricks. Don't look at the screen. Look at chat. Jesus Christ, they were spamming. I wonder if you could even see anything. And I was completely ignoring them the whole time. Might want to make the chat smaller. Fuck it. If they want to spam, they can spam. It costs them fucking money to spam that fucking emote. Come over and join us on stream, the YouTube audience, we should say. Fucking Ann on my arm or some shit. Hold on. Miller, stop it. Lol. That one guy who reads comments about how I shouldn't be a mod. It's come for me. You should like that. Alright, they're just spamming shit. Only episode I remember is when some fat prick beats up Tony. Bobby beats up Tony one episode, Seth says. They were spamming Lamau. They were spamming. But yes, I didn't even know Seth had seen some Sopranos. But yes, that happens in season 6, episode 1, I think. Or is it? Yeah, it is. But that's besides the fact. What could we possibly say about Tony Soprano? He's fucking probably the best protagonist I've ever seen. the most not developed. He's strictly not developed. That's part of his appeal. But the most fleshed out character, like his problem with authority, that's sort of retroactively given. When do they talk about that? Because I remember he has a dream where he's confronted with his like high school coach or whatever, and Silvio has the scene with him where he's like, "You've always had a problem with authority, and that's why you don't want to bend the knee to John." Well, John Sacramone, that is. And he was ready to give his cousin up. That's all such great stuff. Season 5 is the best season of The Sopranos. It's so fucking good. Blendetto was such a good character. And Steve fucking Buscemi, right? Why did I think that was wrong? But yeah, Steve Buscemi is fucking outstanding. Jesus Christ, Sopranos is so good. I don't know what else could, like, Tony, we could talk about him in relation to other characters, and therefore we may as well just put Carmela in S tier now. Like, their relationship is fucking outstanding. Their fight, in Whitecaps is fucking unfathomable. They have like 2 or 3 fights in that episode, and they're all such great, like, raw, real, deep attacks on each other, and it's like, oh, it's so like salient and so fucking succulent and so good. I played them on stream a million times, but their fight scene, Tony blowing up, Carmela finally telling Tony about Furio, him nearly hitting her and then bashing the shit out of the wall, and then his point that he thinks is like a slam dunk about why he wanted to sleep with the one-legged girl, Slavana or whatever, or is it Slavana's cousin? I forget. But and then Carmela fires back with like, "Oh, you're a fucking hypocrite. What about all the strippers and cocktail waitresses?" Like, that's such a great moment. And then they eventually get back together because of course they do, because they're both enablers of each other. They're both fucking pretty bad people, even Carmela. And I feel like a lot of the male audience of The Sopranos doesn't like Carmela at all, because Carmela is a very jealous, like, Carmela is very much a mother. In all the worst and best ways, I'd say. She gets jealous of her children all the time. She gets jealous of Meadow all the time. Carmela has some really cunty moments. And I feel like in general, if you're a male audience member, rather, you probably project onto Tony a lot. And therefore, you'd probably see Carmela as more, not as an antagonist, but as an antagonist-like figure in the plot. And I feel like if you're a woman and you watch The Sopranos, you'd much more identify with Carmela and think Tony was much worse of a person. And I feel like these is sort of built into the show, where like the gender dynamics here sort of play out, and they're very raw, like basic but yet very complex representations of like the typical man or woman of the period there, of which the show is set in. Because the show is originally like pitched, like if you watch the original ads for season 1, it's about, because it's pre 9/11, so it's a very odd point in American history where it's almost modern, but it's pre 9/11, so it's pre like the ramp up of like American exceptionalism and all that sort of stuff that came post 9/11 with like the ultra patriotism and the wars and things like that. So the mindset that David Chase seemed to be trying to tap into there was like, oh, you feel like you've come in at the end of something, like America was going on the decline or something in the late 90s. Like there was a very different culture there, because obviously that's like a double entendre, right? It works as a thematic metatextual like thought process behind the narrative, but it also works in the mob, because obviously the mob, as technology progresses, gets less and less affluent and less like effective at their job. Like the feds are coming down. Organized crime really doesn't exist anymore, not in the same way that it does even in the show. So it's sort of like the end of the mafia here, as it's set in the late 2000s, even all the way up to 2007. Did I say late 2000s? I meant late 90s, until I guess nearly the late 2000s. But it's like that sort of theme is touched on here, because the whole thing about Tony's character is he tries to be what he thinks he's supposed to be, and this is very much a thing in most masculine characters. This is very much the deal with Don Draper. So like in like for Don Draper, the persona of Don Draper is not something who the actual Don Draper is. And I feel like Tony does this all the time, especially with the Vito storyline. I feel like the Vito storyline is bad and is boring and is annoying, because Vito doesn't work as like a sympathetic character, because Vito's like a total prick. But like the one good thing out of that plot line, I think, is the Melfi and Tony scenes from that period, where it's like, well, he's gay, we can't let him around. I'm pretty sure there's the big scene where Tony yells he's an F slur, and like it's supposed to be an obvious statement. And like obviously Melfi, as she's like a psychiatrist, is far more progressive and stuff, far more intelligent than Tony or whatever. But eventually Tony admits that he doesn't really care at all that Vito is gay. Like he has this like libertarian moment where he's like, part of me feels like I should just say, do whatever you want, I don't care. And they bring up like that gay people were finally allowed into the military around the time that storyline was like ramping up. So it was like sort of contextual as well. So Tony by himself doesn't really care that Vito is gay, but he has to keep up appearances. And he feels like he's meant to hate Vito for being gay and be disgusted with it like Phil is. Because Phil is obviously of a generation above Tony. He's a lot older than Tony. So it's like, and I feel like it's like the expectation Tony has put on him from his father, which is another big flashback of like how his father influenced him and how he thinks he didn't have a choice in choosing the life he chose because his father like forced him into it or indoctrinated him into it. Which is just, it's like a cop-out, and it's sort of true, and it's like, yeah, the circumstances were bad for his upbringing, as we see throughout the flashbacks we get of Tony, which are other great scenes, especially when Janice is in season 1 just as a kid, and then we see her in season 2. I like that little touch, but that's not really related to Tony. But like, there's the one where he sees his dad cut the finger off the butcher or whatever, and it's very much entrenched in Tony of like, he should be this masculine figure that he saw his father as, but he's not. And his father probably wasn't that masculine figure either. He just perceived him as that because he was a kid. And that's usually how at least sons' relationship with their fathers are. So it's like this massive convoluted fucked up circle of like their expectations for each other versus who they actually are, and when those clash, it's like fucks everything up. And then if we add Meadow into this occasion, because Meadow is absolutely an S tier character, and I'd put her above Carmela even. I'm a big fan of Meadow, which I think might be a hot take in this video. I'd say she's probably my third favorite character. Tony is my second. We'll get to the first in a second. But I feel like I talked about this a lot in the Meadow fucking Corin Grata video I made, about how Meadow is supposed to be like the representation of sort of what I just talked about with Tony, of like being born into this world and like walking a tightrope of like defending her family and getting away from her family and sort of shedding the toxicity that is surrounding her family while also sort of embracing it because she has to. She was brought up in that life, right? She has to have some sort of attachment to it. It's only natural. And I feel like Meadow, the earlier seasons of like cunty young Meadow, like saying fuck you to everybody, is great, and that's very interesting. And then the later seasons of her like calming down and trying to get married to Finn and then to Patsy's other son, and her trying to calm down and like settle down like that is very interesting to watch, and sort of watch like the potential she had at the beginning to be something different, and how she just sort of settles into this role of like, maybe she will become like her mother and follow this same like terrible path down the road, or maybe she will just become a great lawyer and like separate from them entirely. Not necessarily entirely, like she's still in touch with them, but like she moves on from like the people she grew up around and the environment she grew up in, and sort of sets her own path, which is also an interesting thing. If we get to AJ, if I was having a bad day, I'd probably put AJ in D tier. AJ is unbelievably annoying. He is the worst. I think no one really likes AJ, but that's sort of the point, right? We're supposed to relate to Tony and feel like AJ is this little prick who's like a rich boy who's never earned anything and is a total idiot and thinks like all of his problems are actually big problems when they're just little small baby bullshit problems that we shouldn't care about, and we want him to toughen up and we think he's like a sook, and then he tries to kill himself and immediately you're like, we're the pieces of shit for thinking that way. The whole point is that like, as the older generation, Tony is ignoring his son's problems and he thinks only his problems are real, and he doesn't have the ability or the capacity to think about like how these different new problems could affect his son. And that's sort of I love the scene where he tries to commit suicide and Tony catches him, and Tony like yelling what the fuck, and he's sort of like casual, and there's almost a comedic angle to it until Tony like jumps in the pool And there's even like AJ's such a fuck up where it was like it wasn't even properly, and it might have been a cry for help or something. And he's like, my leg's stuck, and Tony has to go down and pick up the thing. And then they get out of the pool, and he like grabs the back of him and he like yells, "What the hell is wrong with you?" It's like a really, really, really greatly acted scene. Season 6 is fucking fantastic, and God, those last few episodes, I know that wasn't in the last few episodes, but God, the last episode of The Sopranos is the best episode of The Sopranos. But yeah, I love that dichotomy is almost made. Another thing I love about AJ's character is that the scenes, there's a lot of season 1 scenes that you think are like nothing, and you probably forgot about, that AJ like took to heart and like built into his very being. Like his conversations with Livia, where Livia like instills this depressive, like nihilistic attitude in AJ, like comes out when he is older. Like when he's a dumb little fat kid, you're like, oh, he's not listening. He probably thinks it's funny or whatever. But then it like clearly has taken root, and there is a cynical underlying side to AJ that was sort of birthed by him being forced to be around his grandmother in season 1. And like he also has a callback. I think, is it in the literal last scene where he has the callback to the season 1 finale where Tony goes on like this big speech about how family is what matters and stuff, and it's supposed to be like this big uplifting scene, and Tony's completely forgotten he even gave this speech. It didn't mean anything to him, but to AJ it actually did mean a lot, and then it comes back later on when AJ mentions it, and it's like these little details where you're like, oh, AJ like was affected by that, and it's interesting to then recontextualize everything AJ's done in the series by that process. But AJ scenes are usually bad, so I guess they're C, and he's not the best actor, though he is good sometimes. So I think we're going to leave him at C. Livia is only around for 2 seasons, and then she's in 1 episode in season 3, which is odd because they had to chop together her lines and like CGI her because the actress died. I watched something where David Chase said that she was supposed to die at the end of the first season or something like that, but they wanted to keep her around because they liked the actress so much. And I feel like all of her season 1 stuff is her best stuff, and then like season 2, she's just like a comedic annoyance to Janice and Richie, but she works as that, and it's fine. And she is a caricature, but it's like so perfect and it fits so well, and like the dynamic where like finally a mother character that is very realistic and also portrayed as like the most evil thing. And I think David Chase has been very, very like blatant in the fact that she was based on his mother, and that he probably didn't have a very good mother, and it sort of comes out in Livia here, because you don't often see that where like she's naggy, she's old, she's grumpy, she just wants to see her grandkids, but she's also like fucking evil, and she tries to get Tony killed and manipulates Junior into doing a lot of stupid bullshit. And there's even that scene where Tony's like, everyone thought Dad was like the real gangster, but it was really you. And then she does the old, I don't know what you're talking about, and she starts faking that she's having memory loss, and it's always up in the air whether or not she actually was like forgetting things because she was old, or if she was just playing everyone around her and using it as a shield or whatever, and like how she picks certain things up over the years. Like when we get scenes of younger Livia, it's like I remember after she has a miscarriage or something, and the reason why she did is because Tony's father couldn't come and pick her up or something because he was with one of his side girls, and then like he has to get Tony to lie on his behalf and things like that. I remember like those scenes, and Livia was like, it's like the same Livia. It's like this overdramatic and like evil person, and I love it a lot. I think it's really, it's a really good character. I love Livia a lot. I think she works very well. Her scenes are like everyone has hilarious scenes in The Sopranos. The Sopranos is very much partly a comedy, which fucking helps it out a lot, and alleviating certain things and making it almost grounded in a weird way, even though Livia is almost a caricature. But there's a lot of realism in her as well. So yeah, she's fucking great. I don't know how I'm doing on these character analyses here. I feel like they're all over the place, but fuck it. Uncle Junior is my favorite character of all time, not just in The Sopranos, but in anything. And this is my top 3 Sopranos characters. It goes Junior, Tony, then Meadow. The Junior character arc is like character arc, if you want to call it that. Like, his character is basically summed up in something Tony says earlier on in the series, where he's like, there's only 3 ways. Is it 3 or 2 ways that it ends for someone like him? And it's like, either you're in the can or you die. Like, no one gets to live. There are no exceptions, and Junior is the exception to that rule. He's a gangster his entire life. He doesn't go to jail. He doesn't die. He gets to, like, forget all of his woes as he, like, dies of old age in a nursing home, as he's losing his mind. And it's like, he actually did it. Junior got the happy ending out of everybody here. Everybody else either gets shot or gets put in jail, or that's what will eventually happen to them if it hasn't happened to them by the end of the series. I mean, obviously, the implication in the finale with Tony is that he either got shot or eventually he was going to end up in prison. But not with Junior, right? Junior's just, he's the exception to the rule, and there's like a simplistic beauty there. But outside of that, every Junior scene is fucking fantastic. He's unbelievably hilarious. He's also got some fucking fantastic drama scenes, like the one where he tells Tony that Richie is trying to kill him. The "Don't You Love Me" scene, where it's again, it's like Livia, it's unsure if Junior is losing it or if he actually knows what's going on. The last scene they have together in the final episode, where Tony finally goes and visits him again after he shot Tony accidentally. Is really good when he's in the wheelchair, and there's like a moment where Tony like pushes his wheelchair out of anger and then tries to downplay his anger, which I think is a great little fucking characterization piece. Everything about this fucking Junior prick is fucking fantastic. Crying into a chunk of marble, that's so many great lines. No, you fucking didn't know, Mikey. So many good fucking lines. I don't know if season 1 Junior is the best Junior. But everything is really good. Like, even later ones when he's only allowed to leave his house when he's going to a funeral and he, like, gets really upset. Everything about Junior is so fucking great. Everyone knows why Junior is great. We'll move on. Janice, I think next to AJ, is almost a universally hated character. But she works on so many levels, like, so perfectly. Especially, if Sopranos is wholly realistic in one aspect, it very much is in its depiction of families. Like, you got the awful mother and the awful sister here, but they feel real. Like, they feel like your siblings and your fucking parents in sort of the most darkest interpretation possible. The most darkest. But like realistic, but the cynical side played up. Like, Janice is an awful person. She also tries to get Tony killed at some point. And then there's one of the Janice scenes I remember the most is after Bobby dies, and it might be the last Janice scene we ever get in the show. Where it's like a very sympathetic thing where because they move into Johnny Sack's house. I just remembered that now. And she's like lying down because she has a kid with him, and then there's also Bobby's 2 stepkids. And she's like lying down, and she's not crying, but she's very sad because she actually did care about Bobby and things like that. And it's like, it's a very melancholic scene of like understanding between the siblings and being like, this really fucking sucks. Neither one of us wanted him to die. But he's dead, and like, what are we going to do now? And it's sort of like this camaraderie moment, but Janice is still asking for money and things like that. It is such an honest portrayal, and like everything she does with Richie and then again later with Ralph and Bobby are all great, like little add-ons. And you hate her the whole time. Like, now I'm remembering when she like beats up another mother at soccer practice or whatever and then gets tackled by the police, and Tony gets furious because now the Soprano name is in the fucking papers again because she couldn't control herself at like a fucking 10-year-old's soccer fucking game. Just unwaveringly realistic in its depiction of like how shitty your sister probably is and how shitty your mother really is. And it's like very honest depictions of that, and I love it a lot. And I feel like it's a fucking great depiction. I feel like I'm going to put Bobby in A tier as well. I'll put him at the top of A tier. I don't think he's an S tier character. Bobby is very lovable. He's very sympathetic. We find out in season 1 that he's never actually killed anybody, which is like a big humanizing element. He also doesn't have like, he doesn't cheat on his wife, either one of his wives, Janice or Karen, right? That was the first one's name. who like tragically dies in a car accident, like a scene after we meet her, which is really fucked up, that Janice then pounces on and like sweeps Bobby up because he is actually like a nice guy. And then it's fucking heartbreaking after he beats up Tony, when he defends Janice or whatever against Tony, and then Tony makes him do an assassination thing or whatever, and it's like he finally did it, he finally killed somebody, and it's like this very like somber, like weird scene that the person he kills is made oddly sympathetic, as The Sopranos likes to do from time to time, and it's like, yeah, Bobby's just like the rest of them, like the one bastion of hope you had here of like the good wholesome member of the group is also a killer now, and it's like, Sopranos can never let you have a moment of like fun and nicety in the fucking narrative. It's got to remind you that these people are all bad, and sort of like and that's like the ultimate point of the show, right? The good and bad is in everybody and shit like that. And it's like, yes, even Bobby in his darkest moments is just as evil as the rest of them. But he is, of course, always lovable too. I fucking love the first scene he's ever in season 2, where he's like, to the victor goes the spoils, and Tony tells him to shove the fucking quotation book up his fat fucking ass. Just, again, every character in The Sopranos has fucking hilarious scenes, as well as these cripplingly sad, fucking serious scenes that are all great. Now I'm remembering the weird side plot where the wannabe rapper dude tried to get Bobby to shoot him so it would seem like he had more street credit. Fucking, The Sopranos has some weird little side plots there that are all fucking fantastic. Blundetto is absolutely S tier. I'm probably going to put him... Carmela is really fucking like an outstanding character. Blundetto is only around for a season. He was designed to die as a character because Steve Buscemi probably couldn't do more than one season and get tied down for that long. But fuck me if he isn't unbelievable. Like, every scene he has is great. His dynamics with all the characters are great. His eventual, like, unraveling is great. The fact that Tony ends up killing him is fucking great. Oh, everything here is so fucking great. I don't know what else to say. The fact that Tony has to kill him in the end and that he chooses to do it. What the fuck? What a great season, like, little arc that is. And it happens all very quickly at the end. Like, there's like 5 episodes of him like being on the run, and like he heightens tensions with New York because of Johnny Sack, and he kills that one Peeps kid that Johnny Sack really liked, and then Phil hates him too because he killed fucking Phil's younger brother, because Phil killed Angelo. I'm remembering these names that I'm pretty fucking happy that I'm remembering. But goddamn, Steve Buscemi, absolutely outstanding performance. Also, like, the scenes he has with Meadow and how he wants to find his, like, daughter, where he never finds her and things like that. And he also has 2 other kids. Just everything is fucking great. Everything about him is great. And, like, when he gets pissy at the one party where everyone's having fun and he's, like, sad because he sees Tony, like, cuddling with Meadow or something, and he's like, man, I wish I had my fucking daughter around here. But he doesn't, and then he gets, like, pissy. And again, it's like that realism of the interactions of people are fucking pissy at each other all the time. And it's really fucking grating and really annoying, but that's how people are. And Sopranos won't let you forget that. And in its characterization of all of its characters, it'll remind you that even the calmest or the smartest ones just get cunty sometimes, and fucking, it's awful. And we have to fucking watch it play out. But yeah, everything unraveling with Blundetto is great. Christopher, where do I put him? Do I put him ahead? I feel like I've got to, but I feel like I don't want to. I don't know how this S tier is going to rank out, but Christopher is obviously S tier. And so is Adriana. I guess we'll talk about him. Christopher's fucking, like, anti-development is great. The scene where he talks about character arcs with Paulie is great. Him constantly, like, getting sober and getting off fucking crack and whatever he's on. He does it out of a spoon, I remember that. So it's something fucked up. And the coke and all the other things, all the injections he's doing. Like him, like, getting hooked on drugs again, then getting sober, then getting hooked on drugs again, and then people getting annoyed that he's off the drugs and he won't even drink. It's like, again, the cuntiness. Like, Tony is such a cunt to fucking Christopher when Christopher gets clean, where he calls him like a pussy for not drinking at all, and like Christopher tries to be sympathetic to him, like, it tries to make himself sympathetic to him, and it's just sort of like he can't stop, and he's always like a thing. And then Tony ends up killing Christopher too. And Comfortably Numb by Pink Floyd is playing. I don't think it's by Pink Floyd, or it's a cover from some other band. but they're playing it and fucking. And then Tony sees the fucking the baby seat in the back, and a tree branch went right through it. And he brings that up later in that episode where everyone's like sad at Christopher's funeral. And again, there's another funeral of someone Tony is supposed to care about that he doesn't care about. Fuck me. Great, great stuff. Unbelievable stuff with Christopher. How everything turns out in The Sopranos, everything is so great. Again, we can just go over like all the great Christopher scenes. And I put Adriana in S tier along with him here, like. The scene where she admits she's an FBI informant and he like beats her up, and then they have like the like 1 second wide shot where they're just wailing together of being like, oh, what the fuck are we gonna do? And then when we retroactively find out that Christopher like chose Tony over her, and he still can't be sympathetic towards Christopher about like his drug habit or not wanting to drink. He's still cunty, even though Christopher chose Tony over everything, and Tony never like thanks him for that or his understanding. I'm pretty sure he beats him up after that happens, and it's like Christopher really gets the short end of the stick with Tony a lot, even though he gets like the opposite of the short end of the stick a lot because of who he is and that he's a multisanti and things like that. And now I'm remembering like the one episode where he like tracks down the killer of his father and he like takes revenge or whatever, and it's a really weird thing where we're like, did Tony set him up? Did Tony like fucking lie to him? Is this actually the guy? And we sort of have that turmoil inside Christopher. It's just all so good. And then how he quickly gets married after like Adriana dies to like the normal like, what, I forget her even name. She's not much of a character on purpose. And it's like he settles down and he has a child, and then he dies right after that, and it's like, Jesus fucking Christ. It's the cycle again, right? Just like his father, he died when he was really young, and just like Christopher dies when his son is really young. It's like, oh, a little fucking cycle here. I don't know what else to talk about. There's so many other Christopher storylines and great things done with Christopher. I remember the scene where he's like, where he apologizes for Tony after he said he didn't love him. I think that's in season 3, episode 13, at Jackie Jr.'s funeral. Like, that's a great scene, and Tony just not responding, and it's just like, man, these people are really not compatible with each other at all. But we're just keeping up the S tier because Silvio is probably my 4th favorite character overall. I really love Silvio. I love how like cutthroat he is. I love that he's probably the most level-headed and probably would make for the best leader in the whole crew, which the show sort of addresses when he becomes acting boss while Tony's in a coma. But then like it gets to him and he like nearly has a heart attack, and it's sort of like the narrative explaining like Silvio maybe is like would be a great boss, but he's also like, it also, because Tony has the scene with him where he has like, you have no idea what it's like to be number one. And it seems like bullshit when Tony's saying it originally. It seems like a way he's just getting out of not admitting that he actually does have a problem with authority, which is what Silvio is bringing up in that scene. And then he's like, Tony goes on the spiel about, you have no idea what it's like to be number one. It's almost too much. You almost can't handle it. And then later when Silvio becomes number one, he like, eventually, it does get to him. It is too much for him and he can't handle it. So it's sort of like a little neat thing there. But those scenes where he is acting boss is fun, and I love all those scenes. Silvio is like towards the end of the series, at the end of the series, he's in a coma because he himself got shot, and we don't know if he dies or if he lives. Which was pretty tragic. I definitely cared about Silvio more than I cared about even Bobby, which is a whole other thing. Because who else? Doesn't 3 of them get... No, 3 of them don't die towards the end. It's just Bobby, and then they try to kill Silvio, and Patsy gets away. It's a whole fucking thing, but yes. I don't know, what else do we say about Silvio? Earlier on, I think he's probably the funniest member. Always quoting fucking Al Pacino from The Godfather in all of his fucking speeches. And like, I remember early on, like, the best Silvio and Paulie scenes, I guess we'll put Paulie in S tier as well, but he's more at the back. I don't like Paulie, I think, as much as most people do, and I certainly don't like him as much as Silvio. But, like, I remember the scenes where they first initially figure out that Pussy is an FBI informant, and he's like, I want you to see the wire, I want you to see it. That's a Paulie scene. But then afterwards, when they're like, they can't find Pussy, and Tony's like freaking out because he thinks Paulie killed him and Paulie actually didn't. And Silvio's there too. Like, those scenes are all fucking like phenomenal. And then as Silvio's power grows and he becomes like the second in command, he has like much more command to him, and it's so slick in how he delivers like the thing. And you almost feel Silvio is like the most level-headed member of the bunch, but then the show goes out of its way to show like Silvio is a dumb fuck a lot of the time too. Like the whole Columbus Day thing where he's weirdly mad about some Italian heritage bullshit and how the American Indians or whatever are protesting Columbus Day, right? Because Columbus is like an Italian or whatever the fuck. I don't know, American fucking history. And like he has that total irrational like whole episode where he's just trying to fuck with this weird organization or whatever for the American Indians, and it's like, why is he bothering with this? Why does he see this as such an irrational thing he has to do? And this is also done like, you feel like he's maybe like the nicest, and then in season 2 or 3, it would have been 3 because it's with Ralphie. It's with the girl that Ralphie ends up like killing outside of the Bing that Tony like beats him up for doing. Like she is like late at work, but she's not showing up to work, and obviously Silvio owns the strip club or whatever. Ooh, the laptop's gone flat. Silvio owns the strip club or whatever. Good, because we don't have as much to say about the rest of these characters. And she's supposed to be working, but she's secretly at home sleeping with Ralph all day. So he comes and he like basically pimps her out and is like beats her up and stuff. And it like shows that no, Silvio is also like a woman beater, and he's like a fucking prick. When you whenever you think like a character is maybe a little bit morally virtuous, the show beats them fucking back down. So yeah, that's the story with Silvio. He has so many unbelievable fucking scenes. Outstanding performance for someone who had like no acting experience before. Steve Van Zandt, I think is his name. He's like a drummer for Bruce Springsteen, right? Or is he drums? I forget. It's weird when you see him in interviews and he's like in his hippie getup instead of like the suit and tie. It's always interesting. We are going to have to speed things up a little bit because the laptop is going flat. But Pussy I would put in A tier, probably at the back here. Again, a lot of great scenes. His last scene is fucking spectacular where they kill him. His emotional impact he has on Tony is fucking great. Just the performance there is also good. He's just not around as much as the rest of the characters, I don't think, to make enough of an impression to be in S tier. Though I think he is one of the bigger, like, Soprano memes. I feel like everyone that's heard about The Sopranos remembers, like, the big pussy memes about around the time when The Sopranos was first coming out. Now, Furio, he works as an ancillary character for Carmela, but on his own, I don't think Furio is that interesting. So I'll put him in B tier. Again, he has a lot of really cool, great scenes. And again, maybe we're sympathetic to Furio, but we do see him, like, beat up that woman in the prostitute ring and then like shoot the one dude in the knee. Like, he can get brutal and violent when he needs to, so don't get too sympathetic. Patsy I want to put in A tier just because he has some fucking outstanding scenes and some great one-liners, and his arc is really interesting where he like wants to kill Tony because he knows Tony killed his brother, but then he slowly, as the series progresses, forgets about that. And then later on, like when his son is like engaged to Tony's daughter, and it's like he's sitting across from the man that he knows killed his twin brother, and it's like fucking, he must hate that prick, but how much has he forgotten? How much has he forgiven? It's a very interesting, like, inner turmoil for a very ancillary background character. But I love it, everything he does, so he's an A tier. Carlo is great performance, has some interesting scenes. Not much of a character, more of like a background character, who has personality and is great, just not like he's not around enough or doesn't do enough to get any higher here. Ralph is obviously S tier. I'd probably put him behind Blundetto. I love that he gets sympathetic right before Tony kills him, and then Tony kills him for probably not the right reasons after he kills Tony's horse or whatever. Fucking the Ralph thing, he gets sympathetic, and then you find out he's bald at the end, which is a nice little character fucking moment, where fucking Christopher pulls off his wig as they're dismembering his body. That's fucking the weirdest shit ever. The whole, him and Tony playing off each other, how they like hate each other, and well, they don't hate each other initially, how they used to actually be good friends, which is an important part of both of their characterization. And then he becomes like a prick after he beats that girl to death, and Tony hates him for that. And then they come together against Johnny Sack, and they like reform that bond, and then they like work together on some things, and they're like succeeding, and same with like the horse and stuff, and they're getting along. And then Ralph's son gets impaled by an arrow or something weird, and he's gonna die, and Ralph becomes super sympathetic, and he's like, and you're like, oh yeah, Ralph is like, there's moments like this in Sopranos where characters, like, something medically happens to like someone they love, and they get really sympathetic, and they sort of come to this understanding, this momentary understanding that eventually like flies away. Like, Tony has mass sympathy for Ralph with this situation with his son. But then, like, in a moment of anger, he just forgets all that and kills Ralph because Ralph killed the fucking horse. And it's like the dualistic thing here. It happens with Phil later on, where Phil has the heart attack and him and Tony have, like, a heart-to-heart moment where they're like, we should stop fucking with each other unnecessarily. No one needs to die. And then eventually Phil just forgets about this heart-to-heart. Because, like, the cynical birds around him whisper in his ear and tell him, fuck those guys, you're better than them, you should take more from them. And it's sort of like that sort of theme runs true throughout The Sopranos. It's like people will come together and understand why they actually should like each other and then forget about it in like a month and then go back to hating each other unnecessarily. It's like, man, people sure do suck. That's basically the message of The Sopranos. Vito I'm going to put in C tier too. No real love for Vito. He has some good scenes. He has some bad scenes. Not that interesting. The gay concept was cool. It was interesting. It was relevant at the time, very relevant, especially for like 2006, 2007. But Vito was probably not the best character to do a serious analysis of that with, because he is such a fucking unlikable prick, and like we're supposed to be sympathetic for him, but it's like it's hard to be. Richie gets an A. Richie has to get S tier. He can go at the bottom of S tier, but Richie is. What an unbelievable performance, first and foremost, whatever. He's a great fucking performance here. I don't know the actor's name. But him playing off Tony, especially Tony, I'm the motherfucking one that calls the shots, is like the best line Tony ever has. And again, their sort of like feud of like they understand each other and then they love each other, but they also hate each other, and eventually they try and kill each other. And then Janice taking him out before Tony can is pretty hilarious in a turn of events. Richie has always been like a cold-hearted fucking psycho, but it's almost like there's some understandability there, and that sort of goes a long way in his characterization. But really, it's the performance that gets him here. Like, fuck me, outstanding. I'd say I like him more than Paulie. I'd say not as much as Adriana though. But yeah. Fucking Richie. Fucking unbelievable character. His relationship with fucking... Like, the first scene he has with Christopher where he's like, don't fucking hit my niece or whatever is fucking great. And then how this plays into Jackie Jr. I think we'll put Jackie Jr. in A tier. Jackie Jr. is a great character. He's another great performance. The scene with him and Tony at the beginning of season 3 in the restaurant where he thinks he killed Richie, which he didn't, but then Tony lies to him and says Richie's in the witness protection program, is like great. Sit the fuck down is like a great line. Obviously his relationship with Meadow and how that develops and how he becomes sympathetic again before he dies when he like begs Tony for mercy, and then Tony just goes through and lets Ralph kill him. And then that internal struggle that happens within fucking Tony where he projects his own son onto him a little bit, it's like all fucking great. And the fact that he is like his best friend's son, and all the shit there is fucking great. We do have to speed up though. Carmine Lupatazzi, definitely a better. I like his scenes more than I like Furio and Carlos scenes, so we'll put him in A tier. Johnny Sack is obviously S tier. Probably more than Ralphie really. Johnny Sack's everything is great. He very much wears his heart on his sleeve. Like the fact that he doesn't like care about his wife's weight when everyone else makes fun of it around him, and how he gets super mad when he finds out Ralphie was making fun of his wife's weight, but then he finds her eating and that sort of changes things. But the fact that he doesn't seem to have girls on the side either, and he's like very respectable in that fashion, and the fact that he's always trying to play peacekeeper early on, and then when he gets his own hunger for greed and for power, he wants to move against his boss and tries to get Tony to help him. And the Tony and Johnny Sack like tensions that really like saw throughout season 4 and 5 and even 6 through Phil is like, that's like the backbone of the back end of the series, and it's so fucking good. And seeing these two big personalities like collide constantly, and actually do they sort of love each other, do they sort of not? This weird grey area of friendship they have, like everything about their relationship is great. Phil will probably put at the top of A tier. Classic scenes. Again, Phil very much, he almost feels like we're talking about the biting realism of like Janice and Olivia, and sort of like an honest reputation of how much your sister fucking sucks and how much your mother sucks. Phil is very much how much old people generally suck and are like really cunty and really annoying and really petty and all that sort of thing. And it's like he never got over his fucking kid brother's death, and he never would have. And they had to kill him, and that's what happens at the end of the series. He's the boss. I love the scene where he's on the phone with, not Bugsy, that's like the wheelchair dude, I think. But whoever his like second in command is that Tony later meets with, and they put it to rest, and they give them the okay to kill Phil. When he's on the phone with that dude, and that dude is walking down the street, and the conversation gets so far off track that the dude on the phone doesn't realize that he's walked into Chinatown, and it's sort of like, and in that moment he realized that Phil has to go because like Phil is so off track that I was so frustrated with this conversation that I unknowingly walked into a different part of town. It's just sort of some great symbolism that wraps into like Phil's character of being like frustratingly petty and simple in certain aspects, and really not having the temperament to be like a leader, even though he finds himself in that position. Artie I never really liked, and I thought was annoying, just like these two. I don't really have much to say about Artie. His weird love affair with Adriana, his wife, I guess she was super hot, and that was like a big meme throughout the series. Ro was fine. I'll give her like a B tier. She functioned well as like the grieving mother for Jackie Jr. and then as Camilla's friend perpetually throughout the series. Pretty good in that role. Melfi obviously gets S tier, probably behind Johnny Sack, I'd say. Obviously the rape episode with Melfi is unbelievably well written and like a clear-cut example of how to write like the moral center of your series and the unflinching like good guy in this series of terrible people, even though she has flaws and we see them in her own therapy sessions and things like that. Like that episode very much demonstrates that she is like the moral agent of the series, and she is who the series is at least saying is the most moral and best character that we should all aspire to be like, surrounded by like the filth, which is everybody else in this show. But yeah, I don't know. And her sort of giving up on Tony at the end and sort of left up to be ambiguous whether or not she'll take him back as a client, since they have broken up their fucking client, what do you call it? Client, doctor-patient relationship a million times before, and they've always gotten back together. Gloria, I don't really remember a lot of, besides she was crazy and super hot, which, I mean, is my aesthetic. What the fuck? So I'm going to put her in A tier. I remember some of the good scenes with her and Tony, her giving Carmela a ride back to their house and Tony freaking the fuck out about that when she throws the fucking thing at Tony, and she like gets really angry and really mad at certain points for no reason, just showing how crazy she is and shit like that. I remember Gloria, but that really wraps up this Sopranos tier list. This is probably the tier list where we've had more S tier than anything else. Like I'm pretty sure if we added them all up, there would only be a few more in all of the categories that aren't S tier than there are in S tier. How many do we have? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 characters in S tier. Fuck me. Unbelievable series built on the back of its fucking fantastic characters. What can we say? That really lines it up. I gave a bunch of Sopranos opinions here. It'll be interesting to see what the response is to these different opinions that I put out here and these arguments I've haphazardly laid out here. This was not the best explanation. I do hope to make more Sopranos videos in the future, just like the Meadow, Corrado, Corangrata one I did before. That one was one of my favorite videos I've ever done, and it was really fun to make and things like that. So if any like, not opinions, but not examples, but any suggestions is the word I'm looking for like videos or topics I should cover in like a Sopranos analysis video, that'd be fun. So yeah, I'm just generally interested in all thoughts Sopranos in the comments section. But with the video having wrapped up, with us having our list together, all we got left to do is the outro. So support links in the description below. Thanks.